Hello, my name is Henry Wu. This is my video project submission for the CIS 2109 SQL database project. Once again, my name is Henry Wu, and I am individual group, and today is December 3rd, 2025. So let's start off with introduction and business rules. Uh, my database is a Chinese takeout restaurant in the neighborhood of West Allen Avenue, North Philadelphia. It's a real store. You can go look it up. It's called China Walk, and it serves all kinds of customers, and all are welcome to have the version of China Walk's version of Chinese cuisine and takeout. China Walk expects to expand to a franchise all over Philly, and that's because the food is so loved in the neighborhood of North Philadelphia. We aim to serve our valuable customers the opportunity to try the best Chinese food out there. And our Chinese Fuzhou style foods range from classics like fried rice and chicken wings to Szechuan styles, chow mein, lo mein, mein fun, you name it, we have it. Our business rules, and here are just the simple business rules. I took out a lot of the boilerplate. Um, so it says each customer places at least one order. Orders are made by walk-in phone calls. Each order is written on one invoice. So most of these business rules, they target the relationships, how different entities interact with each other. And on the next slide, you'll actually get to see what these entities contain, what their attributes are. And that is in the EER diagram. Now, this diagram, some of the difficulties I had with this diagram was getting started. I mean, you can just look at this database. There's a lot of things going on, and how do you make it from just one entity? How do you begin this diagram? It all starts with putting that one entity down, and that for me, that was employee, the center of it all. I just kind of thought about what would be the first thing I want to keep track of in a database, and that helped me get rolling. Employees are definitely something you want to track, as well as their hours, how much you want to pay them, all that information. And then from there, I was able to identify other entities, um, and yeah, I was able to identify other entities as well as referring back to the business rules because I made this business rule that I'm supposed to base the diagram around, and it also helped getting this on paper. Now, getting the relationships between entities accurate was also very difficult. You can see right here there are a number of optional mandatories. There are a number of manys, single like just one, and there's also manys. There's a lot of these relationships going around, and getting them behaving correctly was also important because um it was a tough time for me to understand what associative, identifying these special relationships mean and how they affect my database and how I want to use them because they're also very useful. So you can see right here I use assignment, right, to be an associative between employee and scheduling, and I also use um what else did I? Order line to be associative between food and ordering. It Associatives link up to entities that are many to many. Excuse me. So the other issue I had was knowing what deserves to be an entity. At one point in my EER diagram, I had a owner in as an entity, but that doesn't make any sense because you wouldn't want to be containing the owner in the database. That's not relevant to contain. You want to keep track of data about the employees because there may be a lot of them, equipment because there may be a lot of those, but an owner is only one person. You're not going to need that unless you're some corporate company that wants to overlook all the owners in a region, which this is not the database of. This is a database of the individual restaurant. Excuse me. So continuing, we go to implementing this EER diagram into SQL Developer, um, into the DDL scripts. And I get the auto-generated DDL scripts from the relational model, which is also engineered off the EER. And I took those scripts and just ran them in the SQL developer script. Now, I into a lot of issues with doing that. The initial DDL script was not really far from being perfect. I had to I had to resolve a lot of syntax errors. So that would be where the name was too long. That would be I was using like I wasn't using right. I was using special characters in the names that you're not allowed to use. I was There was just a bunch of things wrong with the syntax. But aside from that, there were also missing varchar sizes, which basically were the data type of some of my attributes, but I didn't specify how large it could be. So without that size, you can never really know what length of character you can take. And that was important to later on fix. And also arc errors because I didn't set up the subtype and supertype relationships properly. So then there were a lot of arc errors um, with that. And when I hit this stage, I experienced a lot of reiteration. Basically, what that means is I had to go through steps 2 to 4 in the project timeline over and over again to finally get to a satisfactory final product. Some of the some of the database table names like order, table, I later on realized that those are actually reserved words in the SQL database. They're reserved for queries. They're reserved for things that aren't related to my actual entity. So I had to change the entity name to be able to use the same entities, if that makes sense. So now we go into data, and you can see up here I have joined 4 different tables to get this huge conglomerate table where you can track sort of like when orders happen, who served the customer, the number of customers, the customer's name, if it was a mobile order, just a lot of good data because we inserted, or we made a good database. Now we're able to actually use it to gain a good insight on the database, on the data in the database. Now, some of the insert statements on the side here, they show the types of insert statements that I wrote to add the data into the database. Some very generic inserts. But one of the main difficulties I had was figuring out the syntax for writing these insert statements. Um, Coming up with the data was also difficult because there were around 50 total attributes in my database, and that's 50 because I chose to make at least one record per table in my database. And deciding which record made the most sense was also important because you only get one, or if you want to do the bare minimum, you only get one record per table. So you got to make that one important, one meaningful. And moving forward, we dive into security and recovery strategies. And for security, I made 3 roles: receptionist, driver, and developer. And these 3 roles adhere to the principle of least privileges, which is basically giving each person who touches the database the exact privileges they need and nothing more. Um, so each of the roles have differing and important distinct access. Like they can't access certain things another role can. And that helps protect the database from threats, accidents, etc. For backup and recovery, I exported the entire SQL database into a zip file using SQL Developer, the export database feature. I expect to do this every week to maintain reliable backups. And yeah, that is it with my project. This project was created obviously with SQL Developer and as well as the Oracle Cloud to store a lot of these users and all that data without actually having to use my own storage. So that was very nice. Thank you very much.